So, we are here for Music Industry Forum. We're going to talk to some pretty incredible ladies. I'm going to bring them out in just a second. We have 4 of the big names in what's going on in New Orleans festival production from across the board of what it takes to get these fantastic festivals done. And I'm super excited to bring them all out. So let's get our guests out here. A little bit louder, please. Thank you. Welcome, ladies. Pick a seat, any seat. There's a magic raffle ticket under one of them, I think, for later. I'm just kidding. Can we get another hand? Welcome. So as I said, I introduced you all as 4 of the pinnacle people that make all of these fantastic festivals happen year-round. It is a fact that now there are almost double the amount of days in the year of festivals that take place in the New Orleans metro region. We have some of the big names, Voodoo, Jazz Fest. We have the French Quarter Fest that is now like a crazy monster of a festival. And we have Mac and Cheese Fest that apparently ran out of mac and cheese recently. So we run the gamut, right? But I'm gonna let you guys introduce yourselves of who you are, what you do, who you work with, and some of the festivals that you kind of interact with.
Hi, I'm Jessica Spear.
Going rogue.
I freelance music festivals. I work for Voodoo Fest. I work for Jazz Fest. I tour manage full-time as well. I do production, artist transpo, artist hospitality, stage management. We're at multiple events and festivals.
Excellent. All right, well, let's try it, Addie.
There we go. I'm Addie Olson. I'm the festival director for Buku, Music and Art Project in New Orleans. And our office also works on Day for Night, which is in Houston. And I'm acting as the controller on that show this year. And then I work for Winter Circle Productions, and we are the AEG Gulf Coast regional office. So I oversee all the marketing and administrative for our office.
Hi, I'm Melinda Cohen. I work for Raven, so it's a production company. We do a lot of fabrication, custom fabrication for festivals, and also production, so we do stages. We basically work a lot with Paddy on Buku. We do all the stages except main stage, and we do all the side work, all the art at Buku. We do also Voodoo festival just happened. Leifona is coming in December. Yeah.
So everything, basically, like just all the festivals.
Yeah, we're like a vendor that do production and fabrication.
Excellent. All right, last but not least.
All right, let's see. Oh, cool. I'm Elise McCauley. I'm the talent coordinator for Festival Productions of New Orleans, which is the producer of the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival. And it's funny that you bring up all of the festivals locally because the other festivals that we produce are not here.
So tell us what those are.
So we do the Country Superfest series, which is was in Baton Rouge, now in New Orleans, actually, Columbus, Ohio, and then we do Country 500 in Daytona, and then I freelance at Lock-In Festival and a few other smaller events.
Excellent. Yeah. All right. So as you can see, guys, a wide representation, and I want to go back to Melinda real quick. We were talking backstage about vendors. And sometimes we think vendors only mean food and beverage, but that is not at all what a vendor does and what a vendor's role is in this world. So would you mind explaining what Raven does and as a vendor, how it acts with everybody here?
So it depends. So it depends on the festival. Sometimes, like for Buku, we do most of the art, and so we build everything in our shop, and we produce and we deliver on site for Buku. And we also do stages, so we have a lot of lighting, audio, the bigger sound system in New Orleans. So yeah, we will provide all the fabrication and production for the festival.
Excellent. Okay, so there's a number of ways you can come into this world, right? It sounds like all of you, in the things that you do and you just mentioned, have come from different backgrounds. Would you mind kind of going one-to-one and talking about, like, how did you come into doing what you do today?
Hello. I'm on.
Yay.
So in college, I majored in music, and I found this band called Snarky Puppy. You guys might know who they are. I started working with them when I was about 22, booking all their Southern stuff, and I really liked it, and I was like, man, I want to start booking talent. So I started talent buying at a local venue in Lafayette called Atmosphere. It was like 150 cap. And then I started wanting to get more into festivals and event production. So when I was a senior in college, I threw my own festival from scratch. It was 50 bands in one day.
Wow.
In Lafayette.
Wait, can I rewind? 50 bands in one day.
Yeah.
Can you tell what were the hours of this festival?
Like I don't remember. It was so long ago. I'm old. It was I guess 11 to midnight. 11 in the morning to midnight, and it was spread across. Actually, it was me and Tiffany from The Givers. Y'all know her. And so, yeah, it was cool. Like we just we got the whole thing sponsored. We didn't have any money. You know, we didn't know what we were doing. I didn't know what a credential was. You know, so I had to learn super quick, and I loved it. Like the first year that we did it, it was awesome, and I just wanted to learn more. So from there, I moved out here, and kind of got my feet wet in the venue world, and then I started working for festivals after that. I started working for Hookah Entertainment a few years ago in the talent buying office, assisting the talent buyers there in redlining contracts and learning the legal aspect, and then I moved into production after that. So
I hear a lot of trial by fire learning going on. Okay.
I think that's really important if you're wanting to get into this business. Like, do as much as you can, learn as much as you can. You know, don't just stick to one thing. You never know what's going to get thrown at you, and you'll get more gigs that way. Honestly, so
Diversify. Addie, how'd you get here?
Yeah, similar to Jess, I kind of started on a DIY level. In high school, I just knew that I was super interested in music, not only a fan, but also me and my friends started throwing some concerts for our friends that ended up being for their friends, and you know, the whole thing. So, you know, that really piqued my interest, and when I started at Tulane, I met the Winter Circle guys out on the quad. They were throwing their first shows over Jazz Fest back in 2009, and I told them that I wanted to help them promote the shows. So I started on their street team. I was their first street teamer, went on to be their first employee, and things just kind of escalated from there.
Excellent. Linda, how'd you get started?
So I study architecture in Paris, and I study abroad at Tulane. And it's the year that Buku started, and we were just like in school, and the other partner at Raven say, why don't we build some art for Buku? I mean, we won't get paid, but it's gonna be fun, you know. And year after year, we become art director at Buku, and now we do all the stages and stuff like that. But first, I wanted to be an architect, and then I realized that I could use my skill set in because what I do is basically designing ephemeral architecture, you know, that go up and down very quick.
Excellent.
Yeah.
How about you?
Let's see. I got into this world totally by accident. I had gone to college for music business, grew up in San Francisco, and I ended up doing, my emphasis was in copyright law because, you know, we're talking when I was in college, I'm old too, 12, 15 years ago, festival production classes didn't exist. It wasn't a viable industry at that time, at least in California. So I did copyright law and a lot of digital media licensing. I worked in startups. I worked in Silicon Valley doing mechanical licensing for that. Moved to LA, worked for a record label, hated it, and ended up doing like an independent contractor thing in the licensing publishing world. And then realized that I not only hated the job at the record company, but I also hated Los Angeles. Because I was telecommuting, so I could go anywhere. So I ended up here by accident, never expected to stay. Answered an ad for Jazz Fest, and Jazz Fest led to Essence, which led to Lock-In, which led to other things, which led to me quitting my job and doing this full time. And I've been doing this full time for 7 years.
Excellent. Does the legal or copyright background that you have, does that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
So you're using those skills in all of the stuff that you're doing.
Yeah, the contract administration, the legalese, the redlining, you know, it absolutely comes in handy.
So I have a note here to ask you guys. What are you most excited about? What this year? What's the thing that you're most excited about that you're going to work on, or that you have worked on, I guess, already this year? Addie's got one.
So just because I'm in the midst of it right now, Day for Night, this will be their third year on the festival, but the first year that we're involved in it. And they basically brought us on as a contract producer. So we're doing everything from helping with talent buying to overseeing all the financials and the budget management, which is what I'm doing, and then all of the side ops, production. So just everything from the ground up, and it's really exciting for us because we love this festival, and we went first as fans, and then we kind of got in touch with the people who produced it, and it just happened to be the right fit. They were looking for some help, and we came in, and it's really exciting. They announced their lineup already this year, and it's coming up December 15th through 17th. So that's a really exciting new project for us in our office.
Excellent. Anybody else have anything that they're just like dying to get off the ground?
Well, we're in the middle of booking Jazz Fest this year, so we have a lot of exciting things like putting the pieces together, but of course I can't.
Can you give us any hints, like sing 2 notes of whatever the most famous person's songs are going to be?
You don't want me to sing.
All right. Well, so Addie, you just talked about getting something off the ground and how excited you are to finally see this come to fruition. I want to ask all of you, you are about to embark on this hypothetical new festival, right? What is the first thing that goes through your mind? What are the first couple of steps that you want to take as this, creator of this experience? What are the first things that you are most concerned about getting done, getting locked in, getting right?
I think securing at least your core team is probably the most crucial, because you can figure out permitting, you can figure out who's going to actually play on your festival, but to really feel confident and strong in the core people that are going to go through this battle with you, because it is a battle, as you guys know. I think that's, at least to me, the most important part.
Okay.
Money.
So talk to me about money, because you mentioned the Lafayette Festival was like zero money and sponsorships. Talk to me about that.
Well, I mean, like I said, I was super young, so we put a letter together and, sent it out and told them what our purpose was and what our vision was, and people gave us money, honestly.
Well, were you targeting specific businesses? Was it people that you kind of knew were already interested
It was
in
a lot.
the first
It
place?
was mainly like music stores and different restaurants and art supporting businesses.
Okay,
you know what
so
I mean?
A curated list of people you knew
Correct.
would like kind of be in on the mission anyhow.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't know what I was doing, but now, you put a deck together and you send it out to your sponsors and you shoot for the big ones, corporate guys. But I don't know, if I was, had the opportunity to do that again, I would definitely think about the time of year I'd throw the festival.
Okay, why is that?
Because it definitely affects your attendance, who's available, who's touring, and I think about who I'd want to book on the festival and if it's the right time to book that band, or if there's something, the radius around. So say you want to throw a festival in New Orleans, you don't want to book a band that's playing like 150 miles away. It's going to affect your attendance to your festival. And the time of year, you don't want to throw a festival in the middle of Mardi Gras. I know everybody thinks that that's a great time to do it. It's not. You have a lot of people here, but they're all drunk and they don't want to buy tickets. So they don't want to buy anything but booze and catch beads.
Yep.
So
you mentioned time of year. I want to ask, is there a good time of year anymore? Because it seems like we're chock full, right?
To me, in my opinion, if you were going to throw a festival in New Orleans, there's a pocket, right when school's let back in, right? You guys are excited to come back from vacation. There's not a lot of things that are going to be competing with you. You don't want to do it too close to Voodoo Fest. You don't want to do it too close to the summer because nobody's here in the summer. It's hot. Nobody likes New Orleans in the summer, right?
Correct.
So I'd say
definitely correct.
Yeah,
Go ahead, sorry.
like September, or November, late November, right when school's ending. I don't know.
Do you guys have any opinions on pockets that are still left? Did she hit it?
No, I think that's a good recommendation for New Orleans, for sure.
So I've lived here now, I guess, 6 years, and the face of New Orleans in general has changed dramatically in those 6 years, but the festival world has gone on its head as far as I'm concerned. Talk to me about what you guys have seen evolution-wise and where you think it might head.
Well, like I said, I'm from California, so when I first got here, the bands that I may have heard about in different markets weren't being routed through New Orleans. And I think with the change in demographic and just the tastes that are changing, they have opportunities for like bands that you'll have a day for night or for Buku that wouldn't necessarily have been routed through this town 10 years ago, which is, I think can be a little nerve-wracking for some of the locals and some of the people that have been here, because they're like, oh, I don't want it to affect the culture, but I think it's expanding on that culture and giving us more of a spectrum and a gambit to consume music.
Well, no, that's an interesting point that I was going to ask a little bit later, but since we're here, it's really hard to get people to agree to play when they know that their next market is Houston. In New Orleans, it's such a dip down. It costs economic bundles to get down in and back up out, right? And that mid-level market, we don't see a lot of those people that are just the living a middle-class life, awesome musician, has a really strong fan base just because they can't get down here. So how do you combat that? Or how do you guys combat that aspect? Because you can't just have the locals and then the biggies, right? You got to have that middle range. What do you do?
I think that's something that we kind of strive to do, is grow with the artist. So we'll start booking them in a small 200 cap room like Hi Ho Lounge or Gasa Gasa, and really grow with them as they continue to kind of increase their fan base, not only locally but across the nation. So we've had artists go from Hi Ho to Republic to Orpheum to the main stage at Buku, and that's just one example of kind of growing with the artist and seeing it through their whole career in the city and being their go-to promoter in the city.
Do you find yourself having to give a little bit of advice in ways that maybe other cities, like New York, people like this wouldn't have to give that kind of advice?
For sure, and I think that a lot of the agencies out there, and a lot of the other like regional offices that we work with that are kind of overseeing touring for AEG or Live Nation, they always kind of look at New Orleans and they trust the local promoters, because New Orleans is so different than any other market. And one thing that you're going to hear from every agency is, oh, that's New Orleans. Okay, we need to like do it differently because it's New Orleans.
Different consumers, different.
Yes, exactly.
Everything.
And it's a very late buying market too, which most of the agencies, they're not really used to that in other markets. And so it's just kind of little nuances that are specific to this city that really kind of make the promoter's job a lot more important and valuable, just to have that connection with the artist and their representation.
Yeah, there's almost like a guidance piece that other people in other parts of the United States don't have, right? I want to get back. Did anybody have any thoughts on the evolution of the festivals before we get too far into guiding our artists and festival production?
I honestly I feel like so I tour manage. Obviously, I've been seeing a lot of different festivals, and I saw a bunch this summer around the country. And if you don't know what you're doing, I don't think it's a good idea to throw a festival.
Go on.
To me, like a good festival to me, like if I was going to buy a ticket to a festival, I want to have a great experience. Like I don't just want a stage with a band playing on it with security and vendors that aren't that good, food vendors, and alcohol. But one thing that we did at Hookah when I was there, we made it an experience, like we had festivals on the beach, or like having, entertaining things like Buku does, like the Boo Creatures, and having really cool exhibits and art, and just make like.
I think people want to feel an experience, like something special. That's why I think sponsors are really important, because they bring, a lot of money to the festival, and then they want to create something that it's special for people to experience, For example, we did this activation for Voodoo. I don't know if you went there, for the beer Modelo, and they did a whole like black light tunnel or something like that. People were like putting graffiti on the wall, like. It's just like, it was fun for people to watch, and this photo booth, they can bring pictures home, like it's just like, they want experience.
Sure. Yeah, I think now more than ever, just to go along with both of you guys, like the vision behind the festival is extremely important, and making sure that vision also comes across to the fans and also within your integrations with partners like sponsors or even the artists, like messaging that you're having your artists put out there about the festival. So with Buku, we try to be really intentional about the branding and, what we want to portray the festival as being. The same thing goes with Day for Night. It's so unique because they're incorporating a whole different aspect into the event with all of the art installations, and they'll bill the visual artists before the performance artists sometimes. So, it's just kind of coming up with unique ways to show your vision and, I kind of differentiate it from other events.
Since we've mentioned sponsorships a couple of times, I'd like to hear from each of you on how you interact with the sponsors, how you garner, a relationship with sponsors. It's not just here's $1 million, wrap this truck, right? It's a whole experience, as you were saying, and it's a whole engagement piece. In New Orleans specifically, I'm curious, with these festivals that we have, like the thematic pieces to it behind that, you can't just be Modelo beer and say like, yep, let's just put some beer out, right? You have to have a meaningful experience. So do you find that in the sponsorship interactions that you have to coach them a little bit, or do they come to you with ideas that are already fitting the mold of what you want to do? Like, talk to me about that dialogue between sponsors and what you want to do.
Well, usually, so we don't dialogue directly with, at least Raven, we don't dialogue directly with the brand. We dialogue with the marketing agency.
Yes.
That they're gonna basically have a concept or a design sometime, and we just like make it happen for them. And we sometimes like the concept is kind of flu, so we have to tell them how to build it, how to make it work, because even if they have that much money, you have to make sure it will be safe for patrons, because security on the festival is really important and you don't want anything to fall off, even if they want. So for Modelo, for example, we didn't just do a big box with a bunch of graffiti on it. We also did an art car. It was a skull art card that we built. Like, we just bought a golf cart and we put like a big skull art car on it with a neon and everything. And then during the festival, just the art car was parading throughout the whole festival, and it was just like music.
It was like a Day of the Dead second line, essentially.
Awesome.
And I thought that was a really cool way to integrate the sponsor into like the thematics of the festival.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people, there were people looking at the activation like that and say, what is it for? Like they just look at it and it just look like a box, and it's basically for just people to sell beer, their beer,
I think consumers are smarter now. I think that festival goers, they expect this 3D piece to it. They expect the sounds, the sights, and then this deeper level of connection, even if it is with Modelo beer. It doesn't have to just be from the main headlining artist. I think they're a little bit more curatorial about why they go to festivals. So it's an interesting play on what the sponsors have to do in order to get what you need to get done, and also to get their product across.
Yeah. I just like the concept of sponsorship for festival, because they always give you like free stuff, like free good.
Free stuff's always great. Right?
At Buku, I remember this year you were entering this room and they give you a lighter with your name on it. I think it's cool. It's a souvenir.
Yeah.
You keep a souvenir from the festival too.
Yeah, exactly. I want to shift gears a little bit and ask you all about the life of an independent contractor. Talk to me about how that has differed, and you mentioned a couple of experiences like with a label and why that's so different, and how you have experienced it through your path.
I'll go first because you mentioned the label. And, honestly, I've been a little bit lucky that I haven't had to do the independent contractor thing. Like, even when I was doing the full-time, the licensing stuff, I had one employer, I had health insurance, I had all of this. But, so many of my closest friends are in that world, and I hear about their tax woes and how they have to fly home to their parents' house in Pennsylvania because they broke their arm and they can't get it addressed here. So it's a very very sensitive, very, engrossing topic that I think is kind of glossed over a little bit. You're like, all right, cool, I'm just going to flit from gig to gig. I'm getting on a plane. I got my suitcase. I'm going here. And then all of a sudden you get all of your 1099s and your W-2s, and you're like, what did I just do? You know? So I think, if any of your parents are accountants, that would be a good thing, just like, but set yourself up financially, because it can be a really devastating blow if you don't. And I think that is probably the biggest piece of advice I could give to anyone entering the independent contractor world, because obviously it does happen. People make livings. You're a great example of doing that. But it does take that extra push and that extra level of diligence in order to make ends meet.
Yeah, so if anybody here hasn't had to do their own taxes, good for you guys.
Right.
But the deal is, with independent contractor, they don't take out any of the employer taxes that naturally come out if you work for a regular business. And so at the end of the year, you're like, great, I have all my paychecks, this is awesome. But you actually owe money back to the state and the federal government because they haven't taken that out on the front end, and you have to pay it on the back end. So I've had a lot of friends in the festival world, in even like teaching gigs, that they didn't do that. And it's this horrible surprise come like mid-March to people who didn't plan. So
Very
it's scary,
scary.
right?
Yes.
So talk about your experience with contracting.
I've been independent for about 2 years now. It's the best thing that's ever happened to me, honestly. And it's also the worst thing. You know what I mean? It was really scary at first, but it's really nice to work for myself and pick where I want to work. But it took a really long time to get people to call me and to find gigs and to make connections. Like, when I first started, you have to work for free a lot. I made a living when I first moved out here in New Orleans. I didn't know anybody. I street teamed for a living. I had 5 different clients, venues. You know what I mean? When it was legal to actually hang up posters on poles. But independent contract work is great. I get to travel a lot. I've been all over the world, the past 2 years, and I get to see different places. But one thing that I experienced the first year locally is like, it's dead during the summer. It's dead in December. Like there's a couple periods of time locally where it's dead. So you
have to plan. And
you
kinda
have to
something
plan
lined
ahead.
up, right? Yeah.
You have to save your money, and Elise is completely right about taxes, and it's scary, and but since I got this tour management gig, like, it's been really great. You know what I mean? So New Orleans is really tough if you're independent. There's not a lot of work here, and I'm sorry that I'm saying that, but I'm not sorry. It's true. Unless you're working for a company like Winter Circle or Live Nation, it's the music business as an independent is really hard, unless you're in, working for those companies or working in a venue.
So you say New Orleans. Do you think that's just a product of our lack of the true infrastructure, like compared to Nashville or compared to LA or New York? Is that
it's
feel
oversaturated.
Yeah, and it was just, in the past few years that a Live Nation office has opened in New Orleans, and that an AEG office is now in New Orleans.
Yeah.
So New Orleans is just starting to see that kind of national presence.
One thing I can say about freelance and independent contract work is you need to have multiple skill sets, unless you're an audio engineer or an LD. Like I do a lot of different things. I don't just do one thing. So I like that. I like having multiple skills, and don't pigeonhole yourself. Learn as much as you can.
I'm guessing at some point in all of your lives, somebody gave you a task that you were totally blanking on, right? You've never done it before. Of course you said, no, thank you. I'm not going to get paid for that job, right?
Yeah.
No, you said, yeah, I can do that. Of course, I've done that. I did that yesterday. What was the scariest moment? Like, what job did somebody hand you that you were like, I've never done this. I've got to totally make this up?
I can speak on this. Insurance. So
Aha.
now that's my biggest, or not my biggest, but one of my primary roles with our.
So talk to us a little bit about what's required first, and then tell me about what you had to jump into.
So you have to collect bids from different brokers. You have to negotiate them. You have to understand what all of the deal points are within an insurance proposal, which that in and of itself is kind of confusing. You have to make sure you're fully covered for any potential incidents that could occur. And then not only that, you have to go through the process of submitting a claim if any incidents do occur. So a few years ago on Buku, we were going into the show and we had really bad weather leading into it, and lightning struck on 2 locations within the festival grounds the Thursday night before we opened the gates on Friday. So we actually had to submit a claim through our insurance for cancellation. We didn't actually cancel the festival, but everything that we spent was to mitigate a potential cancellation due to all of the weather-related issues that happened on site. So just going through that process was a huge learning experience for me. And luckily we have really good vendors that we work with who are able to kind of bring us through the process. But that's one thing that I kind of went into without much previous knowledge, and now I feel like I've got that under my belt and could do it, going forward.
Well, the myriad of things, I mean, you're not just insuring just a stage.
No, definitely not.
You've got the property that you're on, you've got the people that are working
Yes,
with
your
you,
staff.
the people that are there to listen, the vendors, all of that, and that keeping all those plates spinning is an intense thing. And
Definitely, and also understanding, what potential liabilities there are with the show. So, if you're hiring an employee versus an independent contractor, there's a different set of liabilities. If you have a vendor that doesn't meet your insurance requirements or an artist that doesn't meet your insurance requirements, you might want to bill them back to be considered under your policy. So there's so many different facets that are involved within the kind of scope of insurance.
because I'm super curious, leave out the name, but you just mentioned an artist that might not meet your insurance.
There's tons. I mean,
Can you
every
give us
year
an
we probably
example
have
without a name?
20 or 30 artists, but there's something that's called a tulip policy, which you opt into as a festival or any event, and essentially you can bill the artist to be included within your tulip policy. So usually you bill them between $100 to $300, and they would be included. But one example of an artist is a local act that's just playing, gigs in the city, and they don't have their own insurance that qualifies under their artist LLC or whatever. So that's one example.
Okay, so nothing outrageous, past behavior that precluded them from.
No. It's just that they don't have their own
All right.
insurance set up.
I wanted the dirt, Addie, but that's okay. That's all right. So we just started talking about artists, and difficult and lovely as they may be, there's the pre-points of working with their management, working with everybody to get everybody on board, but then there's the day of. Talk to me about your FaceTime AR experience with your artists and what you do to make sure that that's like super smooth transportation, everybody's happy in the green room, all of that. Talk to me about that.
Well,
It's a small topic, right?
well, so I am basically the artist relations coordinator for the events that Jazz Fest produces. And I always say if I do my job well, I don't see the band, I don't talk to the band, and the only time I do is when something goes wrong. So I mean, I'm sure this is preaching to the choir at this point, but it all comes down to the advance. It's not black and white. The artist relations and hospitality advances are never black and white the way like a production advance can be. So your advance is managing their expectations. Sure. So like advancing Jazz Fest is much different than advancing Buku, I'm putting words in your mouth, like another festival that may have, some stronger amenities, more sponsors, more things available. I mean, I've been backstage at Buku, it's beautiful.
I did backstage at Jazz Fest one year on the main stage, and
so
I know what the amenities are like.
Yeah, so, I have to start out the conversation to, touring groups that are used to a certain level of accommodations, and I'm like, this is a horse race course. There is no showers, there's no catering. You get a deli tray from Rouse's, and you're going to have a great day. And usually they do, but you have to get out ahead of that kind of thing.
Sure.
Like I do Lock-In Festival in Virginia. The closest hotel is 45 minutes away. You're going to spend a lot of time in the van. Yeah. As long as you can just kind of, preemptively get ahead of that. Because I've just seen it so many times when people are like, oh, I don't really want to talk to them about this. They're not going to like it. No, they're not going to like it, but they're going to like it less if you get ahead of it.
Sure.
So
Other experiences down the line. artist relations, either advancing or I feel like you've got a story. I'm picking up the energy right
How
now.
much
Or
more time do
day
we
of.
have?
Well, from a tour management standpoint, I mean, you're completely right about getting ahead of it. The worst is when you go into an event and it's a complete bad experience.
Shit show is the word you were
Shit
looking
show.
for.
Yes. I'd rather know ahead of time what I'm walking into. Otherwise, it just makes it so much worse on your end. Like, you're just going to get it, you know?
Yeah.
And you got to think about, like, these guys are living on the road. That is their home. That bus is their house. You know, like, you have to make them as comfortable as possible, you know, when they get off, the minute they step off the bus. You know, if something's wrong, it's not good. You know, they're not going to have a good performance. And from the other end, as far as advancing, like, being as detailed as possible with advances, it's super important. I just did I was head of transpo for Voodoo Fest this year. And I had done transpo. I've ran transpo before on smaller events and festivals, but nothing in that capacity. So I got to see firsthand, like, what these people expect, you know, and it's a lot, you know, and it's very time consuming. It's a lot of brain work, and it's all about how you react to people when there is an issue. Like, you don't need to pop off on people or yell at them, you know, like I said, like, it'll just cause more waves. I don't have a specific story, but
I'm still trying to get this gossip here, people. You're not helping me. All
yeah.
right.
So.
So both of you have kind of touched on, and Addie, you did with the insurance piece. You have to think of everything ahead of time, right? You can't walk into it and just say, like, well, let's hope for the best. This fried chicken festival, what could go wrong, right? Sorry, that was a dig, but I love them. I love Fried Chicken Fest. Call me if you have any left over. But, you know, walking in and thinking, like, what could an artist expect for transportation? What would they be disappointed by? Or what asinine thing could a fan do at Buku out on those grounds by the river? And what do we need to protect ourselves against? Or even for you as a vendor, the architecture that you create, who's going to be hanging off of this? And how do we prevent them from serious, you know, bodily injury? So what do you do to be prepared? How do you prepare? How do you tick off all those boxes and make sure you've covered all the ground?
Well, with our festival, we have a pretty comprehensive emergency management plan that we put in place, and we have different stakeholders kind of contribute to it. So we have security teams that we hire that oversee all of our security vendors, and they're very well versed, work for events across the world on this, year round. And then, we obviously get input from all of our venues and facilities that we're using for the event, as well as local authorities. And we share it in advance of the festival with all of our department heads and all of our staff. We'll pre-record emergency messages on, hard drives and give those to all of the stages, all of the areas that we can transmit audio on site. So that's one big thing that every, festival or event would need to do, is just have all of your emergency procedures in place in advance, understand where your exits are, where your, safety areas are in case of evacuation, what you're directing to your, fans, where they need to go. So that's probably the most important thing, is to have a really kind of a dialed-in emergency plan.
Sure. Let me ask a little Jazz Fest question here. I think it was 3 years ago. It was whenever Elton John was. It was maybe 2 or 3 years ago when he headlined. I think that was the first time that it really came to public news attention that there were a buttload of people in a very small area, and because it was a rain day. There was a day when
Is it the Stevie Wonder day that you're thinking about?
It might have been Stevie. Yeah, it might have been that weekend.
We had to cancel Stevie and Snoop and Beck, and I just cried.
Which I'm sure was like the least happy day in your world.
And it's funny that you bring that up, because as I'm listening to Addie talk, I'm like, that was a real eye opener about our current emergency plan, which we've since revamped and executed in a completely different way last year. And you can have something curated, you can have your designated responders, you can have your plan in place, and you can get your patrons out and your show canceled, but you're, still have, water up to your hips at the blues tent, and you have catering loadouts, or you have, whatever. So yeah, that was a really eye-opening day. I remember when we were starting to shut down, because I was at Acura. I was with Naleni underneath the tent, and it's pouring rain, and her rain pants are broken. And I was like, there's lightning strikes, and there's metal poles. We should probably go.
Yeah, it's not just the fans that you think about. It needs to be the artists and the staff, too.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we take our first push forward is for patrons and then artists, and then we forget about ourselves.
Yeah.
And I've been in, I'm sure we all have, a lot of scary situations, especially with lightning and with wind.
Yeah.
And I've had promoters who are refusing to stop the show, who are refusing to pull down the video screens when wind is 30 miles an hour. And I've also seen a light tower split someone's face open as a result. So
The good thing is also a lot of the staging vendors, it's in their contracts that they pull down the stages if the wind is over a certain number of miles per hour. So at some point, it's not even up to the promoter; it's the vendor whose equipment it is. It's their liability as well.
Sure. Yeah, which kind of saves you from having to be the bad guy in a time when people are just trying to enjoy themselves.
Yeah. And local authorities, they're going to be with you. If you're in the command center and you're considering evacuating, they're going to be the one to make that call with you as well.
Sure. So I want to look at festivals for a minute and then switch topics and get to you guys as individuals. But festival-wise, what are you most excited about? Like what, right now, like on a daily basis, what is your biggest problem to solve in a good way?
I can speak on it too. Just because there's a lot of things that are happening with us
You're
right
in
now.
like full-born, get ready for
so
Buku Fest.
We, with Buku, just recently, we split from Hookah Entertainment, the company that Jess used to work at, and I actually used to work at too. So Buku is now fully AEG owned and operated event. So we're kind of going through the process of assimilating into all of AEG's kind of practices with their festivals, and that's a new challenge for us.
So this is the first year. 2018 will be the first.
Yeah, 2018.
Okay.
Yeah. So 2018 will be the first year that we're running it from the ground up, our office, and we don't have any partners in the event.
Okay. So you're excited.
Yeah, we're really excited. It was always a good relationship with Hookah, but we split. It was.
That was a good move.
Yeah. So
Sorry.
we're very excited. Hookah is no longer really doing anything, so it wasn't like it was an amicable split for us. But it gives us the opportunity to really take more control over the creative and the budgeting. There aren't as many hoops to jump through to get approvals now, so we can kind of take the reins and make it a bigger and better show.
Awesome. How about you guys? What are you most excited about? Like, this is the challenge that I have. This is my work for the day, month, whatever.
I'm excited for a break.
A little
Festival
bit of a
season
break.
in my world is over. So,
You're coming
Summer
into
is coming.
Yeah, I just didn't sleep for a week. That's one thing. Like, if you're working a festival, you got to consider that you're not going to sleep very much. We were talking about that earlier, but it's super hard, but it's fun at the same time, and it makes it worth it because when you're behind the scenes and you build it, there's no better feeling than everyone like the crowd cheering at the last note of the festival. Honestly, it's an incredible feeling, and knowing that you were a part of building that, it makes it all worth it.
So, since you mentioned not sleeping, can you give me a contrast of day one when you're still in the office and the festival's like 3 months down the road, and then like the last walkthrough? Give me what your day looks like on both of those days.
Well, when I was at Hookah in the talent buying office, so basically I was assistant to the head talent buyer of Tortuga Festival. So day one, I'd watch the buying process, help him, find routing, and get availability from agents. And the next step would be booking them, billing, which is a nightmare, contract negotiation or contract redlining and executing, and then marketing, announcements, everything. Then go to site, build the site, watch it go, everything go down, and then it's a long process.
There's never a start and an end, right?
No, and then you
It's
pick right back up,
It's a circle.
So,
yeah. So what's the day like for all of you? So let's say it's a 3-day Friday, Saturday, Sunday. What's that Thursday look like for you guys?
Well, you don't sleep.
So the no sleeping thing
Yeah, no
runs across the
sleeping.
board.
No matter what happened, like even if you're super prepared, every time the last day is just like a shit show. But
happens.
for me, I'm excited when actually gates open because it means like my work is done and I can just kind of chill and enjoy the festival, even if I'm still on radio or anything. Like,
Sure.
just I done my work. You know, I don't have to stay up for the festival or anything like that.
Yeah.
You know.
My Thursday before Jazz Fest this year, we were celebrating Cuba in the Cultural Exchange Pavilion, and the team that I was working with, the year before I had been, pounding wine at midnight, hating my life, and this year I was like, I'm not going to do that. Like, I can come back and fix anything I need to fix, but tomorrow morning it's going to be fine. And so the people that I was working with are like, all right, we're going to have this production meeting, because usually we have a production meeting with like the event day only staff right before the show. And that's, paramount, like at any festival that I do. But I drove out to Acura and I lit a Cuban cigar and I had a
Right.
glass of wine like a normal person and went home and was home by 8 p.m. And it was
Nice.
awesome.
Excellent.
So that was my probably favorite day before the show experience I've had in a long time.
I love it. I love it. So I want to kind of shift gears from your work in the festival and talking about the festivals to what you all do. I mentioned it's obvious that we have a panel full of ladies here, and it's obvious that the industry that we face isn't always a panel full of ladies, right? Have you experienced challenges to be, a front runner or a team lead or, the head sponsorship person or whatever in your respective experiences? Have you found that that's a tough thing to live through as a female in the festival world?
I mean, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Why? Talk to me about that.
It's just like, I mean, there's a lot of sexist in this world, It's just you can't avoid it. And when you're a woman, they will like in charge of something. They will look at you or look at you down, and expect that you cannot do your work well. So you just have to show them, keep it cool, like calm, and just like show them that I don't care about what you think. Just watch me work, and then you can think what you want to think.
Do you have to overcompensate at times, compared to your male coworkers in a way?
Yeah.
Always, you just said. Okay.
Well, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine about a show that I do in Asheville, North Carolina, and I am one of the producers of the show. Okay. And I kind of run it with one of the male producers of the show. It's the two of us. We're the spearhead of this operation. We've been doing the show together for a long time. And the girlfriend that I was talking to, she's like, they question you. And they never question him. So if I give you a directive, you're going to ask me why. And then I tell John, I was like, I need you to back me up on this. That shouldn't have to be the way it is. Like, if it's coming from me or from him, it is what it is. I don't need to explain myself. I have a reason for what I'm asking you to do. You don't necessarily have to know. And I've just been noticing that more and more. Like, he gives you a directive or an initiative, and you say, okay, fine. If I do, they're like, well, but why? Or can you, why, And I'm like, just do it, because I told you to. That's been a little bit more prevalent, because I kind of came into the event world older, and so I think I had a little bit more confidence. I wasn't fresh out of college. I wasn't 18, 19, 21 years old. So I see it happening a lot more, and I think that it doesn't affect me, but it absolutely does, and it happened today.
Sure. Yeah. But why?
Why?
But
Don't
why?
have to explain myself to you.
You said always, Jess.
Yeah, I've been through a lot as far as, working in a man's world. We all have, and there's a lot of different situations that I've experienced other people go through, and I've been through myself. I remember, for instance, like, I quit one of my jobs. I just couldn't do it anymore, and I was a talent buyer there, and I remember my boss telling me that I would never make it as a talent buyer because I was a woman.
Awesome.
And I left there and I went and became a talent buyer at a bigger company. But
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, there's so many things that I've seen happen, like women getting groped or get just talked down to, and they report it and they're told to keep quiet about it. And it's not okay. in any industry.
We had, what, 3 examples?
Yeah.
Just the 4 of us being back there waiting to come out here.
Wow.
And it wasn't like we had kind of predicted that we were going to talk about it. It was just like, oh, that's right, that guy grabbed my ass. Or, oh, this woman got her bra snapped by one of her crew members on her tour bus. You know what I mean? And that was just casual conversation from 4 professional ladies back there
Which,
just now.
like, you would never predict that that's what's going to come up when you're coming out here. You know, I think I'm excited to see the culture shift a little bit right now of what you said. We have been reporting, right? We've been saying, like, I was treated unfairly. And in traditional, like, the film industry or the music industry response has just been like, yeah, great, that's unfortunate, and we'll probably maybe not deal with that, right?
Or he could get you a job, or
Yeah,
you
so,
don't
like,
want to
well, do you
ruffle
wanna-
feathers,
yeah.
or blah, blah, blah.
But I do think, I feel a certain, I don't know, change in the weather of, like, outing those people, hashtag Weinstein, who are just total assholes and don't know how to be an adult in the world of getting work done. And now the trajectory of, like, yes, we know the system of how to change this behavior. We can replace hashtag Weinstein with somebody equally as great a vision and blah, blah, blah. Do you feel that too? Do you feel like there's movement? Is there
Yeah.
good traction?
And it's not just on the national level, it's on the local level too. I mean, we're seeing it locally as well. So that's exciting.
Yeah. Did you guys see the Sexism project?
Yeah, I had friends
Go up.
that were involved with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So sneak peek of what's coming up a little bit later in the spring semester. Katie Sakura, some of you may know, did a project with a group of filmmakers who both did photography and interviews on film of sexism in New Orleans music industry. So that just launched on, I guess, this past weekend
Friday,
in Preservation
I think.
Hall.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was awesome.
And she's going to be coming here to talk to us a little bit. But I'm glad to hear that also maybe projects like that and speaking out on a local level is changing things too. So that's good. That's exciting.
If I may, one thing that really, after that happened to me, the next year I went out to Polestar, the Polestar conference in Nashville, and they had a panel. There was a panel there. It was all women. On the panel, lawyers, talent buyers, agents, and we all had the same issues at our jobs. You know, just they talked about the daily, you know, struggle of being a woman, but also like we empowered each other. We talked about how we could, and it was really awesome. And if you guys ever get to go out to Polestar, they have a panel there called "Walk a Mile in My Shoes," and it's all women. And it was
When does
really-
that typically take place?
I don't know. When is it?
I think in December.
December.
Okay, they
Might be
probably
wrong.
have like student memberships too. So
Yeah.
no, it's important to just say it out loud. Like we get
Yeah.
these awful things that happen, and everybody's weird and quiet about it, and then it continues to happen.
Yeah.
So like just speaking out loud about common experiences, just as being a human, I think is super important. So
Yeah.
just getting the chance to hear people say that and talk about it. If there's one thing, I'm going to ask you guys like a curveball question now, and then I'm going to open it up. If there's one thing that you could change about the New Orleans Festival climate and scene right now, what would you do? It's a thinker, I know. I warned you that it was a curveball.
Maybe, I think I might know. So, quality over quantity.
Aha.
I can co-sign on that.
Yeah.
Amen.
Okay. So we have a seconded and a.
We all agree.
Yes. Okay. So bringing quality experiences, that deep entrenchment of engagement, right? Over just boom, 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 every weekend something.
Some of these festivals are really janky. Like, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. There is one festival in particular that I'm not going to mention it, but I remember going and the lines for the way that the site was laid out. Like, you got to think about everything when you throw a festival. Like the site, you know, like don't put your food vendors directly across from each other, too close to each other, where you have lines running into each other that completely, you know, crosses your audience area, and it's aggravating when you're trying to watch a band. You don't want somebody eating chicken or pizza or corn dogs in your ear. Like, just think of things, you know? Get good, and please, like, get good sound vendors. You know, like, sound is like the biggest thing, you know, like that's the first thing I think about, you know?
Yeah.
It's got to sound good.
Hire Raven.
If you buy tickets, you don't want your system feeding back the whole time, or like, just make it sound good.
Yeah. Well, I think, Jazz Fest is an awesome example of having to angle stages that are just chock full of boom and
Yeah, 'cause
Snoop
we
Dogg
have
going on at the
13
same time.
stages in that small footprint, so we're very meticulous in how we angle things and just how we present it. And I mean, I went to Pilgrimage Festival in Nashville for fun, I know, and the sound bleed was miserable.
Sure.
And I was like, I wanted to check out some of the up and coming acts from Nashville, and it was just being drowned out by fits and the tantrums, which I'm not necessarily like mad at the fits and tantrums,
Sure.
but that's something to be thought about if you're trying to curate something for exposure and have maybe some quieter acoustic or whatever acts. You really need to think about, because it's disrespectful, I think, to the musicians and to the audiences that are trying to see it. I remember that was an issue at Voodoo a couple of years ago too.
I was about to say, like, did anybody notice that the LaPleur stage at Voodoo was turned now? I remember when Nine Inch Nails headlined a few years ago, Bass Nectar was playing at the same time, and I was so upset because I was, I loved them both, but it's Trent, and I was like, dude, this is bad.
Cursive just ended up singing along to Macklemore and Ryan Lewis because he was like, whatever, I guess I'm doing, what's the song, Thrift Shop? He's like, I guess I'm just singing this. 'Cause it was so bad.
Yeah, which ticket prices, like, I don't want to hear confusing messages of songs at the same time. So.
Well, I think it goes back to what they were saying about the overall experience. Like, it's an experience. If I wanted to hear Macklemore and Ryan Lewis and Cursive at the same time, I guess I'm getting that.
Yeah.
But, like, why wouldn't I go see Cursive at the Orpheum or the Civic or something like that
Exactly.
and pay a ticket for that particular band? So.
Yeah. Kudos just quick on the work that Jazz Fest does on Congo stage with Frida. As far as sound bleed goes, that's a work of magic that I still have no idea how you guys do
I
it.
mean, Frida herself is a work of magic. So.
Indeed.
You already know.
Yes. All right, so I want to open this up a little bit for questions. Apparently it's time. Can we have one
Never mind.
question? One question. You got a question? Yeah, ask your question.
What was it that really made you think, like, okay, no, I don't want to design bridges or buildings. I'm going to design stages. Like,
Yeah, so it takes a long time to build a bridge or takes a building, at least like 2 years. I don't know, it depends. It's like a term of years. And it was kind of boring to go through every little details, like where you put the door, where you put the window, everything has to be reviewed multiple times. You work with a lot of other architects on this, and it's just like the time frame is just really exhausting. You just don't see, you see the same project for years. And what I like with music industry, building stages, like touring for artists or stuff like that, it's just like it goes so quick. I draw something and probably the next week is gonna be built. It's just like boom, 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 and then you take it down. And then also the challenge to make sure that everything that you build has to fit in a truck, so it cannot be like 8 foot tall or whatever, you cannot go past. So it's really challenging, but it's exciting, like.
Nice. All right, so if you want to talk to these ladies more, you can come on down.